Okay. Hi, thank you for being here. Welcome to my talk, Getting Out of Quicksand with DevOps. And I think it's always difficult to be the first or the second one after the lunch break. So I want to start with a little exercise, and it may not seem related, but if I do not forget, I will come back to it. So who of you had lunch at the food court downstairs for lunch? More or less all of you, yes. And they had some very quite fancy food, I think, but I'm still wondering who had pizza or burger? Okay, and then one even more interesting question. Who had ice cream? Who wanted ice cream and didn't get any? Why? You didn't know, okay. Any other reasons? Too many people, queues, yeah, exactly. We will come back to that. So how did I end up here? So my name is Pickl, and for the last year and a half, I've been a technical project manager at Elektrobit in Austria, in Vienna. Elektrobit is an automotive software supplier. Before that, I was CTO of a medium-sized company, also in Vienna, and before that, also a process manager at the Austrian parcel service, which I want to joke that they also deal with continuous delivery in a way. So I say, sometimes I've been dealing with continuous delivery for quite some time. I have a background in IT and business, and CI/CD and DevOps is the sweet spot for me, as I really love how the things that I learned in my production management courses and operations research are nowadays also applied in the IT domain. So they do not only fit in my head, but also in the industry. What I also wanted to say is that I'm here to learn, which means that I'm looking forward to the discussions and the questions, especially if your opinions and also your experiences differ from mine. So, in September last year, I was speaking at DevOps Days in Cairo, and Andrew Scheffer showed this slide during his keynote. It says, "I don't have time to learn new things because I'm too busy getting things done." And he quotes, "the least productive person in the world." During that time, I was also working on this talk, and it really resonated with me. And I was at this time also was reading a book of Tom DeMarco called Slack, which also states that we are all too busy, and this not only kills our efficiency, but it also kills our effectiveness. So being effective is about doing the right things, while being efficient is about doing the things in the right manner. So you are efficient when you do something with minimum waste. You are effective when you're doing the right something. It's possible to be one without the other. It's also possible to be both. For example, simple example. Imagine you have a flat tire, so your car breaks down, you have a flat tire, maybe you don't know. And you start, I don't know, cleaning your car or changing the wrong tire. You could be very efficient at this task, but obviously you're doing the wrong thing, so you're not effective. On the other hand, if you change the right tire, but it takes you 2 hours because you don't know exactly how it is done, and you haven't been doing it before, and you need multiple attempts, you are effective, but you're not efficient. So we want to be both, but often we are neither. In this book I mentioned before, Slack, Tom DeMarco also cites evolutionary biologist Ronald Fisher, saying that the more highly adapted you are, so the more an organism is, so the more efficient it operates and becomes, the less adaptable it is to any new change. So we really need to find the balance and not over-optimize. However, in my career, I found myself in a situation similar to the following multiple times. So, for example, I've been working on a team of 3, so an ops or dev team, and the workload was not evenly distributed. For example, let's say one of the persons, a woman or man, are working like 100% of their time. Then there is one, maybe the most experienced one, skipping or having lunch breaks at their desk, working on weekends, often being the bottleneck and having hair on fire. And maybe there's one more junior person with some slack, but no one of the others have the time to show them the new stuff, or they are holding on to their dear tasks. So we experience an overload situation, and we show symptoms of overload. For example, decreased team morale, working long hours, unhealthy task queues, more frequent illnesses, and, for example, imbalanced metrics. And then something interesting happens. You will get more and more of the following discussions. So I've changed the cat pictures here. So we have different pics in our Slack channel. But so the colleague mentioned something like, we really need to fix this XYZ hell. But this will take some time. And then you ask them, okay, for example, me as the technical project manager, so how much time do you need? And then something very interesting happens. So you expect something like, 5 days or a week or a month or a year, but they say they need 2 or 3 days. And I'm like, why are we talking about this? So 2 or 3 days, it's obvious that we need it. You say we need it, but it does not happen. And it hurts again and again. So, for example, we say that we really need to use this static code analyzer or improve the development pipeline or introduce a better debugger, use Docker, whatever you want. But it just does not happen. And you feel like this. No thanks, I'm too busy. And you're wondering, that there is a better way of doing stuff. So you've talked to friends, or I've talked to friends about it. I've seen it at conferences like NDC Oslo here, but we're just too busy. So who of you can relate to that, just being too busy? Raise hands. Oh, a lot of you. Okay, so I go to my manager and ask him for support in DevOps, in testing, or Java developers, whatever. And he says something interesting. He says, yeah, I don't know if we really should look for support in this area. Your work is not evenly distributed, so just do some redistribution of work, and it will certainly take some time to find someone. So I'm not even sure whether we would be able to utilize that person up to 100%. But, I have an idea. I will talk to XYZ in the other department. There is a project currently on hold. And one of these people may help us with this missing 20% that you need. And I'm like, this ain't gonna work. Individual knowledge workers are not freely exchangeable. I cannot do the work that my colleague is doing easily. I cannot take it over. It's because he has specific expertise, and he's maybe not easily replaceable. So Tom DeMarco calls this the myth of the fungible resource. So we cannot switch people around. And we also don't want to do that. I don't want to utilize my key personnel up to 100%. Utilization is not a good proxy for productivity. And the manager looks at me and is like, what? What are you talking about? And then I want to talk with them about queuing theory. So when preparing for this talk, I remembered that queuing theory and operational research is very interesting, but also it's quite hard to understand in the details, at least for me. There are different types of queues and models, but let's look at the simplest case. For example, if you look at the GG1 single server queue, which means that the interarrival times of tasks, for example, have a general, meaning arbitrary distribution, and the service times, which means the time you need for this task, also have a different general distribution. And for example, you could imagine that you have a cashier with customers coming in at different time intervals with different number of articles in the shopping basket. So they have different interarrival times and it takes different time, or the time differs to service these customers. Then the Kingman equation tells us that the lead time, so the time to go through the whole process, is heavily influenced by the service time, the utilization of the actor, and the variation of the process, which is like the task variability, and and the inter-arrival variation. So if you have a cashier, and I don't know, on average, they can handle like 20 people an hour, and these people come evenly distributed, and your cashier is not working at capacity, you don't have a problem at all. But once the inter-arrival distribution or the service time differ a lot, and your cashier is utilized over a specific level, then things can escalate quickly. So if we assume that software development or operations is a process with high variability and with a decent amount of task variability and inter-arrival time, then, and if we look at the Kingman equation, then the wait time is related to the percentage of time busy by the percentage of time idle. So if a resource is 50% busy, then it's 50% idle. Okay, that's obvious. But so the wait time is 50% divided by 50%, so 1 unit of time. So on average, a task would wait in the queue for example, 1 unit of time, could be 1 hour before work even starts. With 90% utilization, it would be waiting for 9 times longer. So the graph here on your right gets steeper with higher variance and flatter with your lower variance, being a flat line in a perfect world where you don't have any variability. So there is an inherent conflict between service quality and capacity management, with things deteriorating heavily at 70 and 80%, depending on the variability of the process, of course. There's also a similar idea called Little's law, which shows a relationship between the average lead time, and it's important, it's average, the average lead time, the average work in progress, and the average throughput. And there are some important assumptions to it. And there's a very good presentation of Daniel Vacanti. You can find it on YouTube. And I don't want to go into too many details, but I've provided it in the references and can show it to you later. So the important takeaway is that you really should focus on throughput rather than utilization. And if you reach high utilization levels, then all your work is just piling up, and everyone gets very nervous and calls for status meetings, which even adds more work. So this escalates quickly. You then reach a state that one of my colleagues in Vienna once referred to as quicksand. The more you fight it, the more it pulls you in. Each time you try to put your leg out, it sucks you in again. But don't panic. Okay, so I've asked you who of you felt, for example, overworked or in a similar simulation like this. Who could relate to this concept of quicksand, where you have the feeling that whatever you do is just getting harder? Okay, quite a few. So I really like this metaphor, and I Googled how to get out of quicksand, and I was not disappointed. So I Googled this, so don't rely on it. So Google says, make yourself as light as possible. Toss your bag, jacket, and shoes. So this could, for me, also mean like it could refer to work in progress. So you try to reduce work in progress. Try to take a few steps backward. For example, to analyze the situation. Keep your arms up and out of the quicksand. So make sure that you're still able to act. Try to reach for a branch or a person's hand to pull yourself out, but make sure you don't pull them in. Take deep breaths, move slowly and deliberately, and don't panic. So I go to my manager again and tell him, we really need more people. And all of them should be only utilized up to 80%. So that they can invest roughly a day per week, or like 20%, to spur innovation, practice new ways, rethink, master new skills. Because that's how it has been done or is done at 3M with 15% time and Google with their 20% time. Google, they have this site reliability engineer role, and in the reliability engineer workbook, they say that their number two principle is the principle for site reliability engineers is that people must have time to make tomorrow better than today. So after all this research and listing all the pros, I've persuaded my manager, but it's too late. What actually happened is that we've got even more to do. Spent considerable time interviewing, and it was quite unsure whether we would find someone. So that colleague, you know, the one with the hair on fire, could not bear it anymore and just quit. So now me and the other team member are also under heavy pressure. And people under time pressure don't think faster. But at least we now found a very skilled professional who starts today. Could be you. And the interesting thing is that given that you have just joined our team, you usually cannot jump right into work and you have some slack, at least in the beginning. So congratulations, you've just joined a team in an existential crisis. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. In the A Seat at the Table book, and they also have it at the bookstore, Mark Schwartz writes that transformational projects occur when the amount of debt has become too much to bear. So often organizations need to experience, and also teams, an existential crisis before they really take on continuous improvement and take it seriously. And I think that the reason for that is a 10% change. For example, all the team working overtime is not enough anymore. You really need a 50% improvement now. So you need an engineering solution. And it goes on saying that if you can establish a sense of urgency, so we really have to change how we work here, and a safe environment for failure. So things that were already late will shift, but we will really need to try something new. And you have the courage to question the status quo, which is easier if you're new to a project sometimes. Then crises are chances and opportunities to change things. So I have an example, and then I'm getting ahead a little bit of myself. But 3 years ago, I was CTO of this mid-sized company, and I supported our ops team, and I asked them how they deploy iOS apps. Is anyone deploying iOS apps or developing iOS apps? Okay, 5 or 7, few. So they told me, and it was 3 years ago, for each of the 5 apps, it was the same app with different variants. Check out the code on your local PC, make sure you have the right Xcode version installed, do these 3 manual changes, select the right signing certificate, compile, upload to App Store, enter and update all the relevant metadata, wait for Apple to review the software. So this takes 1 day. And I asked them, but what if the developer or the tester finds an error? Yeah, they told me then we have to start over. But this is so painful, we release very seldom, and we already asked the team for less releases, which are tested better. And I told them, sorry, but I won't do it that way. It's 2015, so at least back then, and there has to be a better way to do that. Maybe what was a good solution in the past is not today, so let's check. So being fortunate, 1 year earlier, in 2014, Fastlane was released. Is anyone using Fastlane? Yay. Which, among others, helps to automate the release process of apps. So we set up Fastlane with Jenkins in a way that we only had to click a button, and the project manager or the tester or everyone could do that, so it did not have to be the ops team anymore. And then just wait for 20 minutes, everything was done. And this took us roughly a week to get the first version up and running. And ever since, releasing iOS and also Android apps, that was the cool thing, was a non-event, and we did it more frequent with the push of a button. So it really takes someone like you who questions the status quo. But where to start? I think first, you should quantify the work. So what I like to do is something they call activity accounting. So you allocate the cost of your activities in the team that your team is performing to uncover non-value work. So you can do this based on your timesheets or look at your task board. But I think you should not only watch out for these categories, for example, unplanned work, new work, customer support work. I think it's also interesting to look at the things that do not happen or are not done or are done very infrequently. For example, updates, releases, retrospectives, documentation. What you also see is, if you look at your timesheets, you may also see that your colleagues or also yourself are doing a lot of multitasking, which could mean that people are waiting for feedback, for example, due to long build times, or other people not being available for code reviews, pair programming, whatever. As a side note, what I also like to do, and what really helped us making the things our team is currently working on visible, is putting a very big screen in front of your desk with your Kanban board on it. And so everyone could see what you're currently doing. And this not only reduced the number of interruptions, it also helped us to show that we had a lot of stuff to do. And if the priorities differ, we set up the Kanban board in a way that they saw who filed this ticket, and then they could discuss with them before bugging us. So these numbers in this table come from the 2018 SLR report. The low group, for example, so they categorize the companies or the people answering this survey. The low group spends 15% on customer support and 20% on defects identified by the end users. So this really sounds like a quality or at least a documentation problems. What we also see is that the low performers only spend 30% of their time on new work, as opposed to 50% in the elite group. So now you know what you're spending your time on, and you should set goals based on these benchmarks maybe. But what takes so long? There is a saying that what gets measured gets managed. So you should measure flow time, for example, lead time and cycle time, for the features you deliver. How long does it spend waiting, in testing, on the build server, between hands off, and waiting to be released? I think it also makes sense to measure the frequency of deployments and your mean time to restore services. And of course, there are also different metrics and measures that you could track. But what I also think is, or what I got from the discussions I had when presenting something similar, is I think it's very important to get a rough indication and order of magnitude first, rather than trying to measure everything with a stopwatch. What we also saw from Little's law is that work in progress is a leading indicator. The more work in progress you have, the longer things tend to take. So you could run aging reports. So look at tickets that did not move for 30 days or did not change the status on your Kanban board. Or have a look at demand and ticket inflow. On the other hand, we want to increase throughput. So what is the biggest bottleneck in your system? Can you fix it? Can you change something in your process? Do it more often? Can you bring the pain forward? So ask why and investigate the causes or the root causes. Sometimes the fixes are quite easy once you really know what the problem is. For example, I once worked in a project or on a product where the full cycle of building and testing took 26 hours. There was some hardware involved, but still 26 hours. So imagine you do something today, you don't get feedback tomorrow, but the day after tomorrow. And releasing was a manual process which took me, as project manager in this case, 1 hour of my time. So if your build cycle takes 26 hours, or test cycle, and releasing manually takes 1 hour, I still figured that it makes sense fixing the build cycle first, even if that means that I would have to do the manual process more often in the first place. But I also thought I will get a very good understanding of it, and then I could automate the manual process in another step. So, concerning the build time, We used Jenkins back then, so I had a look at the console log, and being new to the team and not really having a lot of context, I found out that I cannot really find out anything because not all of the entries have timestamps. So I installed the timestamper plugin on Jenkins. And then at least I saw which steps in the console took how much time. And I found that the build was disk bound. So we had an I/O problem. Being fortunate again, there was a very small SSD card in the build PC, which really was a desktop PC back then, which I used to run an experiment. So I took one of these jobs and moved it from the normal hard disk to the SSD. And it was an immediate 36% improvement. So I went to my manager and told him, you know, these are the cheapest 300, 200, whatever euro you can invest and speed things up by 36%. And he did. When you're in an overload situation, there is a tendency to do more planning and more status meetings, but rather you should accept uncertainty and appreciate flexibility. There is also a decreasing marginal utility of each hour spent planning. So some people in the industry say that every hour spent planning is an hour not delivering, as the resources often overlap. I think it's you could also say that every hour spent in a status meeting is an hour not programming. And I think there are also solutions for that. For example, if you really have like an incident or a very high priority priority issue, it may make sense to, for example, have a wiki page and update it every hour instead of calling 15 people into a status meeting 3 times a day. I think you should really come up with a lightweight capacity planning. So in Gary Groover, in his book, A Practical Approach to Large-Scale Agile Development, says that they have this like high-level estimates for each component, then the engineering month they have available, and they then just have a cutoff and do the things. Do the things with the highest priority, and then do the more detailed planning on a just-in-time approach. It's also important that you prioritize these things and that there is only one most important thing. And people should know what the one most important thing is. You could, for example, also use cost of delay for ranking these initiatives. So what would it cost us if we don't do this today? And maybe you find out some things do not really have a big benefit or a big cost attached to it. So less is more. And this is also something that you should take into account when looking at your work items. So you should reduce your work in progress and your patch size. So we saw that the Little's Law. So stop starting and start finishing. And what I also think is very interesting that in most of the agile methodologies, there are WIP limits included. For example, in Kanban, you have WIP limits on your board. In Scrum, you have a sprint scope, which also limits the work in progress. And this will also decrease context switching. It will increase focus. It potentially reduces your cycle time. You will get faster feedback. And usually quality takes time. So a daring strategy is to reduce quantity. So say no to additional work or at least postpone it. Having a look at the equations before, we also see that you should try to reduce variability and increase predictability. For example, reduce the number of platforms you're working if this is possible, kill zombie projects or architectures, have less versions and branches, maybe think about trunk-based development, really fix the causes of the problems and not only the symptoms. So you should really do less. Some studies show that 50% to 2/3 of new features are never used and do not meet business intent or improve a key metric. So you should triage your work, find sources of problems, and Smaller batches also mean you have fewer changes that need to be investigated if something goes wrong. In my last company, we also did self-service platform. So we set up CI/CD with Jenkins in a way that we automated more or less everything. And we came up to the point where it didn't really make a big difference, at least on the happy path, whether we press the button in the ops team or the responsible project manager pressed the button. So it changed from a matter of having time and the necessary skill to a matter of permission. We also switched to Jenkins file back then, so infrastructure as code. So all our pipelines were in Git. And this also had the benefit that developers now started to create their own CI/CD scripts based on the existing ones, or at least creating pull requests. Because it was just code. They knew, they had a look at Jenkins. Jenkins files are written in Groovy, or in a Groovy DSL. And for them, it was very similar to have a look at what already existed and find out how things work and promote or propose a pull request. So before that, in the past, everyone was rather unwilling to set up their own Jenkins job because they were afraid of breaking something with all these forms. And now everything also was under version control, so it was easy to go back. So automate, but first try to eliminate. So on some conferences, I hear that people should automate all the things, and I think that's wrong. So I oppose to that. I think you should make time to create automation, get management support. This may also mean to ignore or shift your current work items for some time. So rather ask for forgiveness than for permission. I also think that documenting the process and making it repeatable is the first step to automation. And if you see long lists of steps that some people do to do something, then maybe it's a good recipe for automating this step. Then you should automate, but at first you should eliminate. So new and unique work, your features and new work are hard to automate, so you cannot really automate that. The triage work, so to find sources of your problems, their automation helps because you automate for consistency. At least you know that the process you followed is the process you have in place is automated, and there's no human error in this process because it's done by a machine, and hopefully the machine behaves correctly. And if it's not behaving the way you intended, then maybe you have an error in the in the automation. Smaller batches also mean that fewer changes need to be investigated. And then there's also repetitive work, and this is where automation shines. So reduce manual work, increase frequency. This also speeds up the feedback loop, and the consistency also leads to fewer errors. There are also other benefits. For example, they help you scaling, improve accuracy, reliability, save time, and so far and so forth. What you really should do is fix the biggest bottleneck first. In my example that I said before, for me personally, it would have been the easiest thing to automate like this 1 hour manual thing because I really hated it, and just take the 26-hour build process for granted. Because in the first step, I made it worse for me, but I made it better for the system. So I got rid of this or improved the bottleneck. I think it's also important to note that it may not even be a technical problem. So as we said before, persons could be overloaded. What I also really liked about our automation and measurement efforts is that we could sometimes reach win-win situation, or fixing like a root cause fixed multiple problems. For example, we noticed that in the same project with this 26-hour cycle, that our end-to-end tests ran rather slow. So we measured them in detail and revealed that we had a performance issue because we had a very big memory leak in our product. And fixing this did not only make our tests run faster, but it also helped us debugging faster. And also our customers noticed a considerable improvement. So there are different approaches to automation. One of them is called the leftover principle. And it says automate as much as possible. Humans do what is left. This view makes some unrealistic assumptions. For example, that people are infinitely versatile and adaptable and have no capability limitations. But it's still helpful, as it provides a guidance based on the difficulty of the task, as this one axis, and the frequency of conducting it. So first, you start with eliminating. Then the rare and easy stuff you can do manual. The easy and frequent stuff you should automate. The frequent and difficult stuff you should look for example, an open source solution or a product you could acquire. And the rare, difficult stuff, you create tools, document. And the very rare and very difficult stuff, you could, for example, find a consultant to do that. There are also other approaches, for example, the compensatory principle that say the human or the machine should do the tasks at what they shine at, so which one is better at which task, or the complementary principle to improve the long-term health of the combined system, so human and machines working together. But automation is not a silver bullet solution, and a version of caution is necessary. So when the new automation is in place, there is less total work to be done by humans, which is a good thing. But what is left is harder. This is also depicted in this J-curve of transformation from the latest DevOps report. And it says that your team begins the transformation initiative and they identify quick wins and everyone is happy and automation comes into place. But then you find out that if you automate this process, then you have increased test requirements, or suddenly your manual processes are the bottleneck and you cannot really scale them because you don't have so many people. And so you really need this relentless improvement, refactoring and innovation to reach this excellence. And this requires spare capacity and slack. So you really need to invest to be fast and think of improvement activities as just regular work. So for example, if you use Fastlane to deploy iOS apps and it fails, and it's wonderful, Fastlane is really a very nice solution, then it takes, at least me, a day to understand signing iOS apps again. If you've never worked with it, Fastlane just abstracts it away, and then suddenly it fails. You have to invest a day, well, I at least had to invest a day to understand how everything should work, to file, for example, a bug report with Fastlane, if it was a bug or an error on our side. So we freed ourselves from quicksand, hopefully, which is a vicious circle. So it pulls you in the harder you try to resist. If you're not constantly trying or working to improve, then by default, you're gradually getting worse. This is like the second law of thermodynamics, where entropy just increases. But what is next? What we really want is to establish a virtuous circle, a recurring cycle of events, the result of each one being to increase the beneficial effect of the next. So we need to establish a culture of learning and improvement that compound. Jess Humble, one of the authors of the Continuous Delivery book, says that lean works by investing and removing waste so that you can increase throughput. So prioritize improvements that will do the most to improve flow. Start with the bottleneck, the biggest source of waste, fix it, and then identify the next bottleneck. And this is also what they discuss in the Accelerate book, and there is a quote for that. Improving your software delivery effectiveness will improve your ability to work in small batches and incorporate customer feedback along the way. Yada, yada, yada. Software delivery performance drives lean product management practice. It becomes a reciprocal model, or colloquially, a virtuous circle. In the SRE workbook that the colleagues at Google wrote, they say that eliminating one bottleneck in a system often highlights another one. As each change cycle is completed, the resulting improvements, standardization, and automation free up engineering time. Engineering teams now have the space to more closely examine their systems and identify more pain points, triggering the next cycle of change. But this may be a complex problem. So you may not really know where to start, just what you want to achieve. And one experimental approach for product development, but also for process improvement, is the improvement cutter. So you get the direction or challenge. You know that you, for example, want to release more often or decrease your build time. So the first thing you want to do is grasp the current condition. Then you establish your next target condition and conduct experiments to get there, and then start again. Another tool which can help is to collect improvement ideas and prioritize them. Prioritize them on these axes, what is easy, what is hard, what's low impact and high impact. And what I think it is interesting, that it may be obvious that you should start with the easy, small, high impact change. But still some companies and teams, and I'm guilty myself, are still waiting for like this grand rewrite, which is the high impact hard change, which may never happen. And it's unlikely that you will ever have the time to do it. It's more likely that you reach your goal by doing small iterative steps. So again, we want to achieve this virtuous circle so that software delivery performance drives lean product management, and lean product management drives software delivery performance. So you do more releases and test automation improvements. This means you can do faster releases and have more time for new work, which means you have more frequent releases, fewer changes per release, lower lead time, fewer bugs per release, faster feedback, higher confidence, which results in more time to automate, and off it goes. So I think it's really about the feedback loop. So speeding up feedback. Did your project fail? Is the build process successful? It's really important. Did you get feedback from the customer? It's really important, for me at least, to make this feedback loop faster. So reduce waiting time and get the results. So taking this into account, we went on a journey of roughly 6 months to 1 year. And we really spent 20% or roughly 1 day a week to improve something. This may not have been the fix to the bottleneck in each and every way or each and every case. But if not, at least it made the bottleneck more obvious. We also created self-service pipelines, reducing the stress and our own workload. We used information radiators to inform others about what we were working on, reducing interruptions, and we set clear priorities and weekly goals and followed up on them. So in this case, rather than hiring more people, the crisis really allowed us to transform our way of working, reaching a state where we did have this 20% headspace to spend 1 day a week to improve something, and in a way achieve more with less, being more effective, efficient, and satisfied at the same time. So I want to conclude this part of the talk. It's not over yet, with what I talked about. So I think the important getaway is if you are in a crisis situation, or if you are in the team which is under heavy load and you just joined this team, don't quit, or maybe, but at least give some thought whether you can really change the situation, because crisis situations are opportunities for change. Never waste a good crisis. Often it also takes fresh eyes, or at least the courage to see the problems, or name the elephant in the room. So get out of quicksand. The sky is the limit. Quantify the work and set goals. Measure. Less is more. Automate the right things. Establish a continuous improvement process, and start a virtuous circle. This is also in line with the 3 Ways of DevOps. The first way, dealing with the workflow. The second way, improving feedback. And the third way, continual experimentation and learning. But don't forget that it's people over process over tools. So if you want to know more about the things I talked, you of course can talk to me. But I also think it's important to mention these books. I've read all of them. They are very great. And I think I've just checked, approximately half of them are also available at the NDC bookstore. So we still have some time, and I would be interested about your feedback and want to start a discussion and answer some questions if there are any, and I can answer them. But before that, as an additional input, I want to show you a short 3-minute clip from the movie The Replacements from 2000 with Keanu Reeves. Did anyone see it? No one knows it. So it's about a football team, and the top players strike. So they have to come up with a solution to that. So they get random people or old football players, people from prison, whatever, to play in their team, and they have to get the team quickly. They have to yell as a team very quickly. And the new coach has an interesting idea, and I really liked what they are saying. So do we have? I guess we have audio, right?
Okay, coach, it's all yours.
Full screen. Where's full screen?
Last Sunday, I saw a team on the field play as hard as they could to win the football game. We lost, not because of effort or desire, but because of lack of leadership, lack of trust. One of those issues has been resolved. But leadership means nothing if a team doesn't believe in each other. Players spend years together before they develop trust in one another. And I'm asking you to do it in a week. Not a reasonable request, but these aren't reasonable times. Now, I know you all have concerns about this Sunday. But a real man admits his fears. That's what I'm asking you to do here tonight. Who wants to start? Fears, let's talk about it. Fears.
Hey, I'm scared of spiders, coach.
Well, that's not what I meant.
Me too, coach. I'm afraid of spiders too, coach.
Yeah, goddamn spiders freak me too, fellas.
Well, I didn't mean that, though. What I'm talking about...
Especially in your bed, man. Ever get one of those spiders crawling up your arm, man?
And then he crawling on you, man.
Oh, damn.
Oh, thanks, Jumbo. You can just rock me to sleep tonight.
Okay, that's great, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is what scares us on the field.
What you mean, like spiders on the field?
Can we get beyond the spiders, please?
Bees?
Bees.
Bees. Y'all know about them bees?
Anybody here afraid of anything other than insects? Huh? Come on.
Quicksand.
Oh, shit.
Hey, quicksand's a scary mother, man. I mean, first of all, it suck you right in, and even if you scream, you get all that
I
muck
don't
in your
think that's
mouth.
what Shane had in mind, frankly.
Huh?
That's not what he had in mind.
What are you talking about then, coach?
Well, why don't you ask him?
Hey, what's up, Shane? You're playing, and you think everything is going fine, but then one thing goes wrong, and then another, and another. And you try to fight back, but the harder you fight, the deeper you sink, till you can't move. You can't breathe, because you're in over your head. Like quicksand.
That's some deep shit, Shane. Some deep shit.
Anything else you're afraid of?
Going back to the mini mart.
The shipping yard.
The auto plant?
Prison.
Yeah, all right. The truth is, you guys have been given something that every athlete dreams of. A second chance. And you're afraid of blowing it. We all are. But now our fear is shared and we can overcome it together. Let's lose that fear this Sunday and put it into San Diego.
So, in today's keynote, David said that we all can do more than what we think about any given situation, and we have to unfold our true potential. So I really like this movie sequence because they're not talking about the elephant in the room, right? Like they are talking about fears, and everyone is talking about bees and spiders and stuff. But then this one guy says what is his problem, and then everyone else discussed what really is the problem and maybe the elephant in the room. So it really takes the courage to see what really is the problem. So who of you ever experienced quicksand? Anyone wants to share how they respond? What made it worse? What helped? Which spider, bee, or bug gave you superpowers? Here or there?
About a year ago, I got promoted from a dev job to manager.
Okay, let me just repeat what you said. So from a year ago, you got promoted from a dev job to a manager.
But there wasn't really a replacement for what I did,
So your position was not replaced. Your original, okay.
which caused me to do,
You did both.
which got me working with my arrow fire, like in the picture,
Working on Herefire, okay.
which kind of radiated towards the entire team. One, the main developer got burnout, so left.
Okay, so more or less what I just did. So the main developer, so it affected having you working on both positions or roles affected your whole team, and the main developer just got a burn out and quit. Okay, so what did you do?
Well, we tried to automate a lot of the stuff which I did. There was a lot of deployment related work,
So you automated the stuff? Did you? Okay.
a lot of things that were manual database tinkering. We wrote programs that could do that instead of having to manually.
Okay. So you automated the manual stuff of your role.
Now things are manageable.
Now things back to normal. No.
But it was survivable. Developer got back a couple of weeks ago, so we're on the
Oh, very nice.
way back to the
Okay, so the developer is back again. That's good. So maybe you took a step back to make a big leap. Is there anything you tried that did not work? Like work harder? But what I really think is funny is I shared I had a very similar talk in Vilnius this year, and I shared this with one of my colleagues. And then he after watching this he asked me, is this experience about this company or is it about the last company? And I said, it's the same at every company. it's just plain. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, then I guess we can discuss after this session. So thanks everyone. See you later.